Welcome back. Still with me in the studio, Angelique Visser, the National Chairperson of the Fiduciary Institute of South Africa. Also, Cheryl Howard, MD of Cheryl Howard and Associates. She's also with FISA, the Gauteng branch of FISA. Right, let's now get back to the individual. Once you've completed all your bits and pieces, you go through the process. Hopefully you get your return, or you're told what you need to pay in taxes. You pay, or you get the check, or you get the payment into your account. There are questions that have popped up, I know, from other shows that we've done on revenue services related activities, and one of them was a question from somebody who had bought an asset that could be depreciated.
Right.
And wanted to know whether, and I'm trying to think my way through this, he was self-employed.
Right.
He was a consultant. He was self-employed. He had about 5 or 6 companies that he worked with. He'd bought this asset.
Right.
He could depreciate it over 3 years, I think it was.
Right.
And he wanted to know whether he could tell the companies he consulted to not to deduct 25% tax, because he knew that his tax, he was going to be entitled to...
Because he was going to pay less than the 25% that they were withholding.
Yeah.
He can do that. What he's got to do, he's got to go to the Receiver of Revenue and get a directive. In that the company is obliged to deduct a 25% unless they get a directive to the contrary.
So he would
it's up to him to go to SARS, and what would happen is he would show what his income is, he would show his deductions, which would include that wear and tear on that depreciable item, a net amount, and if it works out to, let's say, 20%, then SARS will he will issue a directive at 20%, he would take it back, give to those various companies, and have it deducted at a lesser rate.
You guys have a lot of interaction with people like SARS, people like the masters. Have you found that they are flexible, that they're prepared to listen and accommodate?
Definitely. If I look at it, we administer about 50% of the industry's estates. And also, if we look at the total value, is about 250 billion rand worth of assets. So we go there, it's quite a big amount. So we actually go to SARS and...
Quite a big amount.
That's quite a big amount.
Over 700 members.
Yes. So it's quite, and it's growing, it's rapidly growing at the moment. So when we go to SARS, we obviously do explain certain challenges. And we recently had one where SARS changed the process to change banking details for executors or deceased estates. And we really found it didn't work for us as practitioners because it was time consuming and it was not in the interest of the beneficiaries ultimately. So we did meet with SARS, and they really did listen to us, and they reviewed their processes, and after that they kind of made some changes to it, which we distribute to our members, and it's now changed, obviously, to the benefit of everybody. And similar, when there's specific matters in one of the master's offices, we would meet with the chief master or the specific master, have workshops, and kind of explain to them what our process is, and then make sure that we could possibly align our processes with theirs, if it's possible, to make sure that ultimately the beneficiaries get the best result from these discussions.
So you're not just looking at resolving these issues, but you're also looking, I would imagine, at trying to get people who are not members of FISA, who would be tax experts, accountants, lawyers?
Lawyers, yes. Although they're governed and regulated by the Law Society and the accountants in their society.
But if they're working particularly in...
On the fiduciary angle, we're saying join FISA as well, because the more members we have, the more clout we have when we go to the, these governing bodies to say, look, there's a problem from a general point of view, because if our members are experiencing it, it's happening out there in practice as well. To say, if we've got 700 odd members now at the moment, if we can grow that at this stage, we've got a bigger lobby with regards to making changes. And I must say we're proactive then in approaching the regulators to say, or the governing bodies rather, to say, this is the problem we're experiencing, can we come to the party practically, from what the practitioners are doing with regards to winding up the estate, for argument's sake, and as Angelique said, the bank account. Bank accounts, estates were the hold up on the SARS bank accounts, I think we're keeping estates up for 8-9 months. And by literally going in as a body to say to SARS, can you help us here, the turnaround time is far quicker now.
Because
so the general public is benefiting as a result of dealing with a FISA member as well.
But that would, I would imagine, you talk about 8 or 9 months, that could be absolutely debilitating to the spouse that is left or the family that's left behind.
That's right, because you can't
function.
You can't function. You can't draw money. You can't get your hands on the money that you need to live your life every day, to pay the school fees and put petrol in the car.
Especially if there's estate duty payable in the estate, then you sit in a situation that if you don't know what the total account is going to be from SARS, you can't finalise your liquidation distribution account, and that needs to be submitted to the Master of High Court, and only once it's approved you can distribute funds. So you're really kind of in a catch-21 situation. So you need to make sure that all these processes works very quickly and efficiently.
Okay, having said that, I now have done my will and everything through a FISA accredited member. Does that person, because at a time of distress, which the death of a spouse would be probably one of the worst times of distress for anybody, does that member then immediately kick in and almost take over on my behalf?
That's right. The minute that the estate's reported to the practitioner, he or she needs to report the matter to the estate, to the Master of the High Court. The Master would then appoint the person in terms of a letter of authority or letters of executorship in an estate, and that person steps into the shoes of the deceased and obviously wind up the estate in terms of what the will stipulates.
Okay, so I don't really have to worry about that.
No.
If I'm dealing with the right person.
And you've got a relationship with the person as such.
I remember doing, and it's an awful thing to do, but you've got to sit down and do wills, and you've got to revisit them. And I remember the last time that my wife and I did our wills, it must have been about a year ago.
Right.
And the guy who we use said to us, if you want to change this tomorrow, phone me tomorrow.
Yeah.
Change it as often as you want to.
That's it.
Because you need to be comfortable with it at any time.
Yeah.
He said, otherwise I can't fulfill your wishes at a time where you're not there to fulfill them for yourself. But it's an awful thing to do, but it's so important.
Yeah, I think if I have a look from a practitioner literally taking will instructions, I think the worst is when you sit down and you ask somebody, well, who do you want to be as guardian of your minor children? And then that kicks in and they say, oh, I want to be with my kids forever. And you say, well, you've got to face the reality. Who do you actually, and that's when the squabbles start, because then she wants her family and he wants his family, and oh no, your brothers are loony from that point.
They're not going to your brother.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it does, it becomes, and that's the worst, is when you've got to actually bring minor children in, and then you realize that you might not be around there forever. And if you have a look at, I mean, somebody the other day said to me they can't believe, they've been going to 50th, and now they're going to 50th birthday parties and funerals, because we seem to be, with the pressure that everybody is in, people are, there seems to be a spate of deaths happening from cancers or road accidents or whatever. And as you've quite rightly said, if you want to change it, you change it immediately. Don't leave it for a rainy day, because if once it's completed, you're dead, there's nothing you can do about it. And unfortunately, the legacy that's sometimes left behind is horrible.
Who's it who said, and I know we're talking about such a horrible
death
subject,
and
we shouldn't be laughing about it, but somebody said, don't ever wait for a rainy day, because what usually happens before the rain comes is the storm hits and you may be struck by lightning before the rainy day arrives. If you're looking for somebody who's going to handle your tax, your planning, your estate planning, and all the rest of it. Firstly, you're going to have to, I know you're going to say, make sure that they remember FISA, okay? We accept that, tick that box. But what do you look for in the individual?
I think first of all, a person needs to relate with the person that you deal with, and also a person has to have experience, because it's not just a matter of knowing the theory behind drafting of wills. You need to kind of understand what the implications are going to be when you pass away. For instance, an example that I can mention is when you bequeath your member's interest in a close corporation to a beneficiary, and you're not the only member, you're going to need the consent of the other member or other members in the event of death to transfer from your estate, your percentage that you own. And we've actually had cases where people had to go to court to get the consent because the Close Corporation Act stipulates that you need to get the consent. So practical experience is extremely important, especially also if you look at agricultural land. You cannot subdivide unless you get consent. So in that instance, you can't bequeath your farm to 10 people. So you need to know that you obviously what the restrictions are to set up a family trust, maybe if that's the solution, to transfer into a structure or something. So it's really important to make sure that you know what the implications are.
From a living person's point of view, when do we have to get our tax returns in?
23rd of September is the deadline if you're not going to submit by e-filing. In other words, if you're going to sit and manually fill out with all the pieces of paper. Yep. Otherwise, it is the end of November for non-provisional taxpayers, and then for 31st of January 2013 for provisional taxpayers.
Okay, so we have got a little bit of time.
We've got a bit of time.
We can breathe. Angelique, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful having you in the studio. Cheryl, nice to see you again, and hopefully we'll see you pretty soon. And hopefully we'll see you soon as well. We'll catch you next time on Mansfield's Money Sense. Goodbye.